Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is the vault, episode 491, Sunday Trustee Training, Private versus Government. Definitely want to thank you all for tuning in live, listening to replay. Please hit the like and the subscribe button. Always appreciate everybody that hits that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And every episode, always appreciate everybody just hitting the like button. It's definitely going to continue to push us up in the algorithm and make sure that we stay relevant so we can continue to bring the great content towards the public based off the algorithm. So always appreciate that. Hitting the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And today's episode, we're definitely going to have a good conversation or discourse about Sunday trustee training, uh, private versus government. This is a very important episode to do because so many people come to us throughout the years and they say they want to go private and people want to be private. And so we're going to talk about that with a little bit more of a best practices thought process, practices from the private versus the government, and contrasting how the government operates versus the private sector. There is a private sector. They talk about it all the time. Well, how's the private sector private and the government is not in control of it? That's the easy question to ask. How come the government is not in control of the private sector? How is there a clear division between government and the private, or the private versus the government? How is there a clear? Hold on. I thought there was no privacy, right? Hold on. There's no privacy, but they have private companies, right? So that means they have private owners, right? But then there's this push, this propaganda media play. Oh, there's the privacy's going away. There is no privacy, even in your personal life. So how's there going to be no privacy in your personal life, but they have private companies in the world or in the states? So we're going to talk about it today. It's a very informative episode to go over these things that, some people feel like these fundamental rights are being stolen from them. Oh man, the government, it used to be private. No, it's not private anymore. No, it's still private. Government is the government is just there. We're not saying government's private. We're saying government. They might say, "Oh, well, there's no private sector." No, there is a private sector, and they're very aware of what the private sector is. We're not saying that the government, everyone in the government, is saying that. What we're saying here at the Vault is that there is a public media play that there is no privacy in your personal life. So we're going to talk about that. Private versus the government. Government is the public. Government is the general welfare to protect everybody, right? In that geographical jurisdiction of that government, right? Well, let's talk about it. What are some of the advantages? Well, some of the advantages of the private are that they allow you to take advantage of quickly changing market conditions. They allow you to stay competitive, to implement changes to stay competitive. Now, we're going over some of these things, and in the beginning, it might seem like, well, what's the purpose of saying that? Well, government doesn't implement changes fast. They have programs that they say that are bankrupt. How many Fortune 500 companies can operate bankrupt? So that's where we get to our next point. The private sector focuses on maximizing profitability and to generate returns for their shareholders. Well, this increases efficiency. That's why you have technology improvement. And it focuses on quality decision making. Quality. See how it rewards quality decision making. So let's go over and talk about in the public sector how now they're trying to introduce shareholder capitalism. See how in the government they may be possibly trying to implement shareholder capitalism where it is an incentive base, or maybe not. Depends on what position you are. Are you the owner of the trust? Are you the owner of the assets? Or are you the shareholder? Are you the beneficiary? When you talk about the private sector has a customer approach. That means they focus on how to they get feedback from the customer. They try to maintain the customer. You think the government cares if you're a customer? These are the things that we're pointing out. So when we talk about these things, in respect to, if you're going to go this route, private, you're seeing what has to be done. We're not dependent on the government because that's what makes the government government. It's people are dependent upon it. And the private sector allows people to live out their dreams. It's not a fixed income. It's not a paycheck, it's a payoff. It allows you to develop your decision making and risk taking ability. Very important, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about the private versus the government. Well, the government, they're focused on keeping their job because they didn't create the job. They didn't create a job, they're filling one. These people, because the government is up to so much public scrutiny, because see how that said public scrutiny, you would think that they actually have a higher level of accountability. You would think. And that's our job as the people, to always ask for these government officials to improve their accountability, to do what they say they're going to do. They say they have to adhere to these budgets. Okay. Sometimes they don't even fulfill the budget. Sometimes they go over budget. These are mismanagement practices that the government has displayed at times, and that comes from lack of accountability by the people. The people are encouraged to have high levels of accountability with the public officials, but for some odd reason, whether you want to call it or odd or not, it's just getting involved, ladies and gentlemen. Getting involved, not necessarily in the government, but the administration of the laws. You would think that the government focuses on long term planning, but for some odd reason, they always come up with this argument about the debt ceiling. Why wouldn't you just kick it out hundreds of years? Because this is something to play on the people's emotions. We're all the people. The officers are the people. So why would we threaten you saying that we're not going to raise the debt ceiling? Oh, we're going to have to tighten up our belts. Who's we? The people? Right. Well, private versus the government. We get so many trustees that come into the program all the time. We talked about this on a previous episode about, people in the public trying to be trustees. Ultimately, it comes down to, well, if you're going to be a trustee and you're going private, then you definitely are going to do your best not to be too involved with government issues. We even talk to our trustees about when it comes to charity and contributing to, what is that, political parties. Those are things that they're not a big fan of. When you talk about the system doesn't really advocate it. It's not financial advice or legal advice, but the system doesn't traditionally advocate that. It doesn't advocate it. So it's very important to understand these small things, ladies and gentlemen. We always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe button. Once again, we could sit here all day and talk about private versus the government, but when it comes down to it, when trustees want to be involved with these political trust and political environments or these government trusts, oh, some treasury directors, like, well, who created that? The government did. Correct. The government is the outside of you people law that if you get in the vehicle, you can find out how it works. But trying to use the vehicle without knowing the rules is definitely a road, the highway to hell. Private versus the government. How many people want self reliance, self independence? How can you have that if you're dependent on the government? The government has rules in place that it won't even take care of people if they have a certain amount of money and it's reported to the government. So that's the first thing. Are you reporting to the government or how much you're making? And if that's the case, are you aware that they will not support you if you make a certain amount of money? That's called private. You're able to support yourself and they actually know that. because you reported it to the public. There's no need to give you assistance. Right. Well, this is what we see on a regular basis. There's people saying, hey, I don't want to use the government, or I don't want to be dependent on the government, but I want to use the government. Well, it's not as easy as it sounds, because when you're in the public, you're in the public. When you're in the private, you're in the private. The government is the public. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replays. The vote. Definitely want to do this quick episode, comparing, contrasting some of the differences. Here we go. We remember one of our mentors. We were talking about managing trusteeship, and they said manage it as if it was a public entity. Are you managing family trusteeship as a public entity? Are you managing private family trusteeship as the government? And so we will have to look into results, and we have to look into best practices. So you all can make some clear determination from there. We do our best to always bring some quality content to you all. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe. Definitely do that. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listen, replay. Always feel free to reach out Christian at trustchristian.com. Once again, it's Christian at trustchristian.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Peace and joy.